Oh my God.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and yes, what another week it has been. We are joined by two of our troika of attorneys, Joel Sklar and Bill Seikaly. We have public relations specialist from BME Consulting, Beverly Watts. We have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. We may have others joining us, but we have to see how those writs of habeas corpus get processed before they can actually make it. So hold on tight to all of those. Well, starting off, I guess we're having this on a social media platform, but it's not on Signal. Thank goodness, because God knows who would have been accidentally on here. The Trump administration right now is having to deal with what has to be considered to be not only a glitch, but also possibly a major national security issue and potentially a violation of some serious laws, including the Espionage Act. That is a powwow held on the social media platform Signal involving most of the higher ups. Somebody shaking their head, Nancy.
It's not a social media platform. It's a messaging platform.
It is a messaging platform.
Yeah,
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
I stand corrected. It is not Tinder, at least this time.
It could be used that way, but it's not Tinder. No.
Well, maybe those are the texts that and the messages that weren't released. Well, apparently, what happened was accidentally, editor of the Atlantic Monthly, Jeffrey Goldberg, was on the call that involved Vice President J.D. Vance, Department of National Intelligence head Tulsi Gabbard, the National Security Advisor, as well as the Secretary of Defense. Yeah. All of them, Pete Tattoo Hexeth being on there as well. And the backpedaling has been rather interesting. I believe, Alan, we've got a video on this.
We've got 2 videos, actually.
Instead, they defend themselves by taking issue with the term war plans.
There were no sources, methods, locations, or war plans that were shared.
There were no war plans discussed.
We have said all along no war plans were discussed. There were no war plans discussed.
Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say. Nobody's texting war plans. Nobody's texting war plans. It's not war plans. Nobody's texting war plans, and that's all I have to say.
And thank God we got rid of DEI. Now you can rest assured that the idiots in charge were not chosen for their race or gender. They were chosen purely based on being idiots.
If this story proves anything, it proves that Democrats and their propagandists in the mainstream media know how to fabricate, orchestrate, and disseminate a misinformation campaign quite well. And there's arguably no one in the media who loves manufacturing and pushing hoaxes more than Jeffrey Goldberg. Goldberg is an anti-Trump hater. He is a registered Democrat. Goldberg's wife is also a registered Democrat and a big Democrat donor who used to work under who? Hillary Clinton.
I haven't seen 8th graders deliver an essay with such aplomb as Miss Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary of the Trump administration. Well, a little bit of background information. This had to do with military operations and airstrikes that occurred against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Jeffrey Goldberg then was rather reticent about divulging these messages until several of these denials came forth, as well as, of course, the demonization of said Jeffrey Goldberg, to which he then went ahead and released them to show that every single one of those individuals who was denying it actually was lying, and in fact was lying under oath when they had presented themselves in front of the congressional testimony. Where do we go from here?
You know, I've heard a few people call this a snafu, and I think people who know what a snafu is, it's actually an acronym: situation, normal, all fouled up, all the usually salty.
Oh, Nancy, is this because of Lent that you are restraining?
Yeah, situation, normal, all fucked up. And
there you go.
It's yeah, it's the situation normal that I think is the key part of this here, because this is how the Trump administration operates. They hired bootlickers and toadies, or appointed bootlickers and toadies to these very, very important jobs, and now they're getting bootlicking and toadying, which is exactly what they signed up for. The idea that, I mean, as you point out, this, you know, there's this montage of war plans, no war plans, and then the next day they actually show the text that says at 2300 we're going to, you know, unleash the hounds and all this stuff. It's like, what? How is that not a war plan? Is it? I mean, it's the amount of hair splitting and you know, twisting of language is kind of, it's really off the charts here. So,
Barb,
you use the word accidentally, and that would imply that at one point they knew what they were doing and it just hit the wrong button. I don't think they had even a clue as to what they were doing and who they were adding and what they, I mean, I don't think they knew. I think they are that inept and incompetent that they just went
Is it ineptitude or is it hubris? And Allan,
I was going to say, they keep saying, you know, it's a whole game of semantics where they're saying it's not classified. Well, maybe someone hasn't retrospectively gone back and said, this is classified information. So it was so fluid that they didn't have time to classify it. But what more classified information can you get than this? War plans, you know, live war plans. It's like, of course it's classified. And it's
well, maybe not, Allan. I think maybe at least one of the people who was on Signal was sitting in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago with the rest of those boxes. So it may not have been exactly classified because everything in that room was declassified. Beverly.
Yeah, but I think we're soon going to know, and I can't wait for the full report to come out because he appointed Elon Musk to do a full investigation. So
Elon Musk?
Yes, he's been in charge and he's been appointed. He's going to do a full, thorough investigation of how this happened.
I feel so much better.
Well, right. Bill.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a couple things are important here. Amongst all the lies that were told, I think it was Walls that added Goldberg to the chat. And what's he come out and say? I don't even know who this guy is.
He just happens to be in my contact.
Any of the reporters know. People talk to reporters, back channel information all the time. Clearly, he had his phone number in his phone. Clearly, he had communicated with them. And this attack that Goldberg is somehow, you know, pushing a false narrative. This guy did exactly what you hope any good journalist would do. He had this information, could have leaked it immediately, could have revealed it immediately. He didn't. He respected the process. He knew that it shouldn't go out. He held on to it. He contacted the government before he wrote the story. He did everything you could ask for. This guy demonstrated that he was a patriot, and the people who are going after him should be horsewhipped. But I also want to point out a comment that very few people seem to be talking about. Haggis has made comments about Hillary Clinton's emails in the past, in which he has said repeatedly, if somebody did this in the military, just one time, they should be charged and fired. Just once. There is no room for mistake. He made that comment time after time and again on Fox talking about Hillary Clinton, but he had no problem saying it was no big deal when it's me or any of my friends. This is hypocrisy beyond belief. And then to make it worse, the FBI, Patel sits there and goes, I don't see anything to investigate. Mm-hmm. And Lord knows the Attorney General came right out and said, there's no criminal activity here to look at.
Well, the fact that the Speaker of the House was parroting talking points means that there doesn't seem to be then a congressional investigation that will go any further as well. I take it, Allan.
Well, except that the two the joint members of the Armed Services Committee have agreed that they need to investigate.
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, the language, all the language and everything is just right out of the Trump playbook. I'm sure he said, tell them they're idiots and they're liars and Goldberg is a piece of shit. And here's just play that out. And, it's not surprising that Hegseth and the rest of the cronies who've all lied during the hearings, their confirmation hearings. I mean, Hegseth had to lie one time after another. So what's another lie? I mean, the beauty of it, I think it's all kind of humorous. The beauty is that Jeffrey Goldberg had all the evidence there and they were still lying and begging him basically to come out and lay it out there, which he did. And so fuck those guys, man. It's such a disgrace. I mean, the media has had to put up with this kind of shit. Luckily, Jeffrey Goldberg had the goods to slam them,
Joel.
I want.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, please.
Go, Joel. Go ahead.
Okay, I just got two things. One is I think you're going to see more line in front of Congress if Trump has the pardon ability to pardon people for these federal crimes. I think line is the norm. But there's the impact of this is just a little bit of the incompetence we're seeing. It's the tip of the incompetence iceberg that's floating and rapidly melting. The other ramification is who the hell is going to share information with us? We're already, if we're so loose with it. So again, every day Trump's in office, we're a lot more safe, less safe than we were the day before. And this is just accelerating that process. So the shit is going on every place. We're traveling down the road. The media can do whatever the hell it wants. Ain't going to change a thing from what I can see. I don't see people really on the right screaming. If this was a Democrat, there'd be hell to pay. I mean, I don't understand why the Democrats aren't being more vociferous on this. And just, this is be on top of this, just like the Republicans were with Hillary and anything else that the Democrats made a mistake.
It's bad, Joel. Right. It's bad, Joel, when the Democrats aren't even fundraising off this stuff.
Yeah.
Beverly.
That guy would have lost his job by now if it was a Democrat.
Where's our senator, the former CIA analyst? I mean, why isn't she saying anything? I would expect her to be in front of a microphone immediately. I
think Senator Slotkin did.
She did.
Yeah.
Okay.
She did.
Well, glad to hear that.
Yeah. Bill.
I do think we've got to look at this and the response in the picture of a larger context of issues we're going to be talking about later on the show. And that is, if Trump has been effective at anything, if the MAGA base has been effective at anything, it's been quenching free speech, picking up people with green cards and student visas and silencing law firms and doing all of these other things that dramatically impact people's lives and cause people to think twice about speaking out against Trump. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been true with the media to a great extent. Look, they really had the good this time. But anybody think this is the only time that this kind of stuff?
No, I think it's going to continue to happen. I think you're spot on, Bill. The fear and the intimidation is real.
Yeah.
And this is just
effective.
Very effective.
I listened to a New York Times podcast this morning, and first of all, they
great. Now we're going to get great. Now we're going to get raided.
Oh
But,
yeah, Maggie Haberman, who takes a lot of shit from lefties, but is really, I mean, every bad thing we know about Trump generally came through her somehow. But she said that Trump didn't really understand what group texts were, and those of us who have been on them in the past, we know how they work, and especially on Signal. I have Signal on my phone, and I use it for a particular group chat. But it's like when people enter and leave, you get a notification, and so nobody in this chat said. And I think in this one, everybody was identified by their initials initially, and initially, and they said, JG has been added to the chat, so they wouldn't necessarily know. When JG left the chat, they would have all gotten a thing. And did nobody think to ask, who's JG? We haven't heard from him for this whole thing, and he's not texting, flex muscle emojis when the bombs went off. Who's this heretic? But I mean, it's just the level of sloppiness. And a friend of mine was saying, wait until Hegseth leaves his phone in a Irish pub in Washington, on some future St. Patrick's Day. It's like this shit's really going to hit the fan.
Maybe they thought it was J.G. Jetworth.
With this big binder on how to attack China.
Right. Yeah. I want to know. First, find China on a map. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, one of the things that really bothers me too is the way that Vance just trashed Europe, trashed our greatest allies. That whole thing, it's like all this stuff is going on, and there he is probably fixing his eyeliner and bitching about the people that we have been allied with for 70 years, 80 years.
Well, since World War I. Yeah.
Since we got our independence.
Since we got our independence, and they just don't. And you're right. This is the beginning, and what has been happening that we haven't found out about. This is truly, and all they do is deflect.
Mm-hmm.
Deflect.
Well, I think it goes back to but I think, and you're right, Barb. I think it goes back to what we were saying, that fear and intimidation. Imagine if the public or other elected officials or the media is intimidated. You can imagine the administration. They know what's expected, and that rhetoric, they will stick to it because they want to retain their jobs and stay in good favor.
Right. Well, they're beginning to put people out of the streets. I'm sorry, and they're and taking them to God knows where. And
well, that's the thing, Barb. I mean, I guess this is going to be when in the future people will look back and say, first they came for the foreign students and the green card holders.
Right.
But now we find that along with individuals like a Turkish student who was picked up by 6 federal agents with masks on the streets of Boston, a student at Tufts University, sent to Louisiana to some detention processing center. But the inference that's made that if you're calling for a ceasefire, that means that you must be pro-Palestinian, which means you must be pro-Hamas, which means you're pro-terrorist, is just a whole daisy chain that seems to be going without any kind of scrutiny or any kind of oversight. And now the Trump administration is demanding universities turn over names and nationalities of pro-Palestinian protesters. The University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, Columbia University, Northwestern, Portland State University, and UC Berkeley to start. Allan.
I think what's also lost in this whole thing is that there are tens of thousands of or people in Israel, including my relatives, who are protesting against the war. There's an issue now with reservists in the Israeli army reporting for duty because they feel Israel violated the agreement. So I don't know that any of the people protesting the war are pro-Hamas, but they are against the war, and they are.
I wonder if it could cost them entry into the United States, Allan.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on. We were talking about the goddamn First Amendment.
Right.
And you know what? Here's my problem. Let's assume for a moment these people are pro-Hamas.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
I happen to not be, but let's assume they are. That's going to become a crime in this country?
It can't be, right?
Well, it's, the point is,
look, you get deported for it.
Yeah, no, we've got, we talked about it on another show, and someone said, well, good, the guy from Colombia, he's for this and it hates the Jews and this and that. And I said, are we going to start deporting everybody who hates everybody? It's like, we may not like the Nazis.
Only people who hate the right people.
I can support this proposition.
Well, can I just ask, whatever happened to
support Trump?
There was a notion at one time that I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend with my life your right to say it.
Right.
Well, what happened to that? Where is that? I whether you agree or don't agree, it's the marketplace of ideas. People come here, they get a visa, they want to taste the fruit of liberty, and it's fucking poisonous. So what is going on? So it offends me on a zillion different levels. It should offend all of us and terrify us because it's easy to point to the foreigner. Pretty soon it's going to be pointed to somebody, all of us, some of us.
And that's the protest everybody should be doing. Everybody should be protesting against that. Our freedom of speech.
We need to be careful. We need to be careful about our words. And I didn't mean to jump on you, Allan, but I think generally people say, oh, okay, well, if he was supporting a terrorist group. And I might feel differently if they were providing funds to Hamas. I might feel differently if they were doing something active. But to support Hamas with their words, you remember what Trump said about the Nazis in Virginia?
But this is the problem. But Bill, isn't this the problem now that things have gotten so bad that the definition of lending material support to terrorists, starting after 9/11, has brought us to this point of saying if you just say something, you're giving an endorsement. Allan.
I just want to say to Bill, I wasn't trying to. I was just saying even the way the lines that they're thinking is fucked up. I'm 100% with you. It's like I say. I mean, we want to start getting rid of everybody who hates all the the Proud Boys and the skinheads and the neo-Nazis and all that. I mean, there would be a lot of boats and planes shipping a lot of people out of here, and we have to tolerate it because we're a democracy.
Right.
That's
my fellow Buckeye and Columbus, Ohio native, Larry Flint, or maybe it was his lawyer. He said, or maybe it was his fancy pants Harvard educated lawyer said this, that when a government wants to crack down on speech, they don't go after the nice people. Not at least not to start. They don't go after the op-ed writers. They don't go after the academics. They go after the people that it's easy for everyone to hate or at least find distasteful. People like Larry Flint, who was a pornographer, the former, now late publisher of Hustler magazine, which was the rankest kind of skin magazine out there. I'm sure Joel likes it anyway. But
looking at Saeed, he was looking at it. He's like, yeah, I remember that.
We only bought
rankier.
But his, he said it's like they start with people like me. They end with people like the rest of you. And that's why you have to be tolerant of even people like, Mahmoud, what's his face? The guy that they disappeared. Yeah, Khalil. Or, some of these other Jew haters or whatever. You have to put up with that. That's just the price of living in a free and open society, which we no longer do. I think that needs to be said.
Just for the record, that magazine was called Rustler. I lived in Texas. I swear to God.
Oh, now that explains it.
We can do a whole show about my Larry Flint stories from when I lived in Columbus and he lived in Columbus. But
let's look at.
I want to hear them too.
Yeah.
Let's look at the ripple effect of this. Major law firms have now decided to decline taking cases that would cause them to represent opponents to Trump, capitulating to White House pressure, including such storied law firms as Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, Garrison, as well as Sullivan Cromwell.
And Skadden.
You're stepping on my trucks.
They now agreed to take, what was it, $40 million, do $40 million worth of pro bono cases that Trump supports. That was the settlement.
That was who's Skadden Arps?
Paul Weiss.
Oh, Paul Weiss. Okay.
Which probably means cases against him.
Yeah.
No,
it's another chilling free speech. It's just another way to
actually it does two things.
One, of those who can't speak for themselves. It's an assault on all lawyers. eventually it's going to be incumbent upon some, I think, sole practitioners, people in small firms who are going to have to be the champions of this. And I'm a solo. I don't know, how big you're with.
What about the
You're taking my speech out of my mouth, Joel, and I really resent it. It's
truly.
You can play the piccolo in the background.
Yes.
like used to happen on Green Acres.
Hey, Nancy, mansplaining is a real thing. Let me just go ahead and mention that we are joined with we have another attorney here, and that is attorney Jalal Abdallah. Jalal, welcome to the show. We're talking about law firms. What an entry. I mean,
right.
The only better entry is like when that one baseball player had careless whisper as he would get to the batter's box. We're talking about major law firms seemingly capitulating to the White House, agreeing to not take cases to represent opponents of the Trump administration or Trump directly.
Wow.
So, Bill.
Yeah, I think what's incredibly dangerous, because Paul Weiss was one of the big firms that did a lot of Democratic work and did good work. By agreeing to this settlement in which they're going to do $40 million worth of pro bono work for Trump-supported causes, it does two things. One, it disqualifies them,
flicks them out
from being able to do cases against the same organizations or the same causes that they now represent. Very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, unfortunately for our profession, what should have happened is all the law firms should have gotten together and said, okay, we're putting a stop to this. Right. Unfortunately, that's not what they did. What they started to do was raid one another's law firms to try and pull high-level associates and partners off of one another. And so there's been a huge shuffling amongst these firms. This is probably the most dangerous phenomena that's going on in our country right now. This silence of all the opponents.
Yes.
All of them.
Yes.
Jalal.
I know Jalal. He's not going to disagree with me.
I don't disagree at all. I mean, there's just so much to cover. It's almost overwhelming. But yeah, when I saw that, I believe with the Paul Weiss situation, I think the partner was his name Mark Pomerantz, I believe. He did absolutely nothing wrong in any situation, and the capitulation to the Trump administration. Okay, I get it with a lot of the politicals, right? The Republican Party, even the Democratic Party, the people in Congress, we know that. We know, they're spineless, and politicians will just do anything to stay in power. But the capitulation by lawyers and law firms, not only did that shock me, but it scared the absolute crap out of me. I'm like, man, lawyers, and not to prop up our industry, but I'll just say it. I mean, lawyers are the last line of defense in a democracy. In fact, they're the enforcers of a democracy because, go back to Watergate. I don't want to go over history, but perfect example. Nixon didn't want to give up the tapes and the White House recording system. What forced them to give them up? It was attorneys and the Supreme Court and the American consciousness
and journalists.
So to go from that 50 years ago, the standard that the legal profession set, bringing down a corrupt president, to just pure capitulation and kissing the ring with this guy, I think it's the microcosm of how far we've fallen in this country, and it's really scary. And we just need leaders, man. At this point in history, we need strong leaders, and we don't have it right now.
I totally agree. Totally agree. We cannot have the legal team and our judges going silent or being intimidated. This is the moment now, because they are, just like you just said, that's our line of defense. And the journalists, because if you look back at history, the journalist has also been the one that held the line and enforced the issue and was not intimidated. So if we have the journalists and we have the legal profession and the judges being intimidated or being silenced or just quiet, we're in serious trouble. Where do we go?
You can go in terms of history. You can go back a little further, because you can go back to what Dick the Butcher said in Shakespeare when they were talking about how do you bring down the society, and the answer was, first you kill the lawyers.
I thought you were citing Dick the Bruiser from WRIF.
Butcher. He was a butcher.
Okay.
Bill.
All right, just checking. All right, Alan.
I want to give a shout out to the law firm of Williams and Conley, who represented the Washington Post, who I spent many hours there over the anthrax case where they were trying to get sources and stuff. But they have stood up against the Trump administration, and I'm really proud that they have done so. It would have been heartbreaking if they hadn't.
But boy, they're the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but I agree with you. They've done the right thing, but they're the exception to the rule. It really has fallen, as Joel was talking about earlier. It's fallen on the small law firms and individual practitioners who, are now trying to band together to do something about this.
Well, switching gears. Actually, you know what, Alan? Let's just take a quick commercial.
All right, let's take a commercial. As soon as I find it, we will.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Well, it looks like a couple of Trump's nominations are perhaps in a little bit of trouble. Elise Stefanik, Republican congresswoman from upstate New York, has had her nomination pulled by the president. She was going to be nominated to be the United States ambassador to the United Nations. The rationale for that was because Congress is a very tight margin and every vote is going to count. And given the fact that New York State has a Democratic governor, that the vacant seat would then be appointed by Governor Kathy Hochul. So Trump wants Stefanik to do his bidding in Washington, not at the United Nations. But the other nomination that may be in danger is that for the ambassadorship of Kuwait, with our very own mayor of Hamtramck, Amir Ghalib. The Anti-Defamation League has stepped forward and has urged the president to retract the nomination based on allegations of statements that Mayor Ghalib made either by himself or may have liked and forwarded and shared on social media platforms. Alan.
Well, last night, Trump had a dinner for a Ramadan dinner at the White House. And both mayors from Metro Detroit who have been nominated for ambassadorships, including Dearborn.
Bill Bazzi in Dearborn Heights and
Ghalib. Amir Ghalib was also there. So to me, for Amir Ghalib to show up, I have a feeling that that Trump is not going to capitulate to the ADL, the Jewish Congress, and all that. I think he's a master at trying to convince everyone that he's for them. At the same time, he's for, the people who hate the Jews. And then he says he's for the people who are Jewish, and he's for Black people, and he's for the Klan. And, he does he's so good at pandering to everybody. So Amir Ghalib, he's put out some racist and anti-Semitic things, very homophobic things on Facebook and stuff like that, and I don't think it's going to matter really. I don't think it'll put a dent in it.
Well, I mean, go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to say Trump never admits that he's wrong. That's one reason that this signal thing is blowing up. He's incapable of apologizing or saying I made a mistake. It's always, he's the master of the sorry if you got offended kind of non-apology. And so my feeling is that Mayor Hamtramck, Ghalib, thank you, can keep packing his bags and get ready to move to the Middle East and be the Yemeni in the room. So I don't know.
Jalal, how do you think this is playing out in the Arab and the Muslim community, both locally and national? On the one hand, there was a certain section that probably would have voted for Trump anyway because they do vote Republicans, but certainly him coming to Dearborn, to the Great Commoner, and the irony not lost on the name of the restaurant, but going ahead and courting them, it seems as though it certainly made a difference. There is some buyer's remorse in the community, but perhaps not as much as some might think.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the feeling in the in Dearborn Heights. I mean, that's the area I live in here in West Dearborn. I mean, Dearborn traditionally is heavily Democratic. The Arab American community in this area is always voted Democratic. But we all know that Dearborn went to Trump this time, and that's attributed directly to what's going on in Gaza. Obviously, people around here weren't happy with the previous administration's role in that conflict, and wherever you stand on that side, I mean, that they just weren't happy here. But I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse at this point. But I mean, it's like Nancy was saying, or I think Nancy was saying it earlier. Allan as well. Trump came to Dearborn. He brought RFK Jr. He went to like a local cafe, and he basically like, yeah, I'm gonna get out of Lebanon. We're gonna have Israel stop bombing Lebanon. The first day I'm in office, or some ridiculous crap that he said that he's always trying to boast about, and people believed him, and they straight up believed him. And now, I mean, Israel's still bombing in Lebanon right now. I mean, airstrikes. Israel hasn't left Gaza. And people are already starting to. They realized pretty quickly that this guy not only BS them, that they were ahead. So what I can say, I just don't feel there's so much nuances going on right now. The nuance in Dearborn, but it's a lot of people felt betrayed by what Galib's done, backing up Trump. But it's just there's a lot of conflict in Dearborn right now, and Dearborn Heights and Hamtramck's. It's kind of scary what's going on over there. Hamtramck's are really going right to the Republicans. And that's and what's going on there more to do with the Middle East, I would say, is the social issues, social conservatism, the why Arabs started moving to the right. But it's a direct consequence, man, and elections have consequences, and we're seeing right now. People are being bought off with these two mayors. That's my honest to God analysis of that. And but there's definitely a lot of buyer's remorse, as you said, Saeed. And I would expect in 2 years this election, the tide is going to turn the other way around.
All right, Allan.
I just to pick up on what Jalal was saying, and having done a story on the gay pride flag in Hamtramck, my sense was that the Bangladeshi Muslims were not as engaged in Middle East, the whole Palestinian Israel thing, but socially conservative. And the same thing with the Yemenis, who are more engaged in the Middle East issues, but again, socially conservative. And I think that Mayor Galib was so turned off that people, liberal Democrats like Dana Nessel were attacking him for being for the banning of the gay pride flag, and people like Michael Flynn came to town, and I think the Republicans saw the opening, what was happening, and they embraced it, and it helped. I mean, they got the mayor of Dearborn Heights, Galib, a Democrat, was staunchly behind Trump. So
Allan has pointed this out many times on this show because he's very proud of that story that he did for the Washington Post.
It was a great story. It's such an American. It's really that I was able to spend a lot of time there, and it's only 10 minutes from my home.
And you love hummus.
Every day when I came home, I felt like I'd just come back from another country.
You had your carry-out container of hummus, but I just want to say though that
Allan, wearing the burqa for that long, I mean, I can tell that you never tanned.
Only in the United States would a oppressed minority. I'm just all minorities are oppressed to some degree, but an oppressed minority move into one of the most tolerant cities in the state of Michigan, establish their culture, open their mosques, face pushback on it from others and be staunchly defended by their neighbors in that very city. The gay people, the hipsters, all these people stood up for them and said, nope, you live here now. You can plant your flag wherever you want. And then when they reach critical mass, turn around and shit all over them. And it just,
ring them bells. But no.
Excuse me?
No, I said they could ring those bells, have everyone stood behind them to have their
call to prayer.
Their call to prayer, all that stuff. Yeah.
We're there, we love it.
And now we're going to send our teenagers out to tear down your pride flags. It's like, just they read only half of the important parts of the Constitution. And so,
I don't want to disagree too much with what Jalal said because I love him, but I'm torn. I don't see any nuance here. And, I hate to say this about my people, but how anybody could have believed that Trump was going to do something to help people in Gaza. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't tell him back then what he planned. I plan on building a Trump facility in Gaza, throwing all those damn Palestinians out.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
This is terrifying.
I think
that the American people fall into this trap so easily. It is why I have now abandoned this position of not comparing them to Hitler in 1938.
I think it's important to remember that in 2020, 30% of the Muslim community voted for Trump before 3 years before Gaza. The majority before 2004 of Muslim immigrants voted Republican because they bought into the whole American dream, build yourself up by the bootstraps narrative. So what we're seeing here is a lot of chickens coming home to roost. It's not a new phenomenon of conversion, it's actually reversion. So, Allan.
To speak of another story I did for the Washington Post, Nancy, last March, I went to the Islamic Center of Detroit, do a story on how the Gaza war was impacting the celebration of Ramadan. And I interviewed a lot of people, including the imam, who was about 29, I think he was 29 years old, Palestinian, born in New Jersey, but his parents were Palestinians. And I asked him who he was going to vote for. And he said, you know what? He goes, I'm not voting for Biden because he committed genocide. So I might vote for Trump if it's a choice between someone who committed genocide and someone who might commit genocide. I'm going to vote for the guy who might commit genocide.
Wow. What a nuanced position.
The desperation of, seeing a little crack of air where they could somehow justify it. But it's
congratulations to him, because according to a recent report, it looks like the kill rate by the IDF now under Trump is higher than it was under Biden. But you also had an incident that happened in Israel a couple of days ago. Oscar-winning Palestinian director Hamdan Balal, who was, along with his Jewish colleague, winners of the best long-form documentary for No Other Land, was assaulted by Israeli settlers, beaten quite severely. In fact, in some reports, they said he was lynched. And then as an ambulance came to pick him up, the ambulance was raided by the IDF, and he was then taken to an undisclosed location with still his injuries. He was only recently released from said detention without any charges being filed, or with any kind of explanation as to why he was picked up in the first place and why there haven't been any arrests of the settlers who beat him up in the first place. So, thoughts, reflections?
It's like the right wing here, to an extent. Maybe worse. I think it's a government that's authorizing god awful behavior and encouraging it. Netanyahu this is his philosophy. It's awful. It's going to cause arrest. I don't support it. I don't believe in it. I think it's selfish and narcissistic to keep himself out of prison. I think this is crazy. It's awful. It's shameful. I'm ashamed. It's a shame.
It is.
Those two
It's a shanda.
It's like,
filmmakers, they gave the most beautiful acceptance speech on the Oscars that night. I mean, it was something that just brought tears to your eyes. They stood there together and talked about that movie and talked about what they wanted to achieve from it and how they worked together. And it was one of those moments that apparently we're the only ones that saw, because that's what you get in this world, I guess. It's a damn shame. I have not seen that film yet. It makes me really want to go out and support it, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
It is.
To the comment that just came through asking if Trump said all praise to Allah at the Muslim dinner, Mr. McCrimmon. This is, after all, the same candidate who had said that Islam hates us. So I'm not sure.
Dinner? I mean,
this was a Ramadan iftar. It was breaking
because
of fast.
Eid is this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Today is the penultimate. Today's
it was an iftar.
Fast.
It was okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Today's the penultimate fast. Tomorrow's the last one.
Thank you for using that word correctly. You are such a smart guy, Saeed.
Thank you. Well, next Friday, just for you and out of spite and out of thirst, I will be holding a big gulp and swigging from yes.
The whole thing.
a halal big gulp. Yeah. So you've got that to look forward to. So Mayor Mike Duggan gave his 12th and final State of the City address a few days ago from the Hudson's Detroit skyscraper, as it is now gracing the land, and will be certainly by far the tallest building once the RenCen goes down, I suppose. Any thoughts about and takeaways for some of what he may have said then? Did anyone watch? All I know is it made Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune go over to MeTV. Alan.
I was really bummed, so I didn't watch, because I was getting ready to watch Jeopardy, and I was like, oh, please. So anyway, go ahead.
I did watch it. I thought, the guy is a master at these speeches with PowerPoints and really making you feel like, oh my gosh, Detroit is the most amazing city in America. I mean, he does a phenomenal job. He got pushback. He was trying to take credit for a lot of the development on the riverfront and a lot of the plans. And George Jackson, who used to be ahead of the Detroit economic growth, whatever, was really pissed and said, we had that in the planning before Duggan was there. He's taking credit. This is bullshit. But, then some people say, well, look, there's still problems with crime and poverty. And no mayor comes in of any city in America and eliminates all the problems of the city. I think he's a really good manager. I think all in all, as if you compare him to other mayors, he's, I think, at the top. I think probably the better, at least equal mayor. I think Coleman Young had a lot more challenges and did not have the wind behind his back. And Coleman Young did a lot of good stuff, at least for his first 2 terms. But all in all, I thought he did. And he was running, he's running for governor. I mean, he was really trying to show people beyond in Metro Detroit, beyond Detroit, look what I've done to the city. Look what I can do to Michigan. So that's.
Yeah, I think I didn't see it that night, but I watched it the next day on YouTube. And just like Alan said, I think when you look at these, state of the state, state of the union, state of the whatever, that politician, they're not going to get up there and spend the majority of their time and say what I didn't get accomplished or what went wrong. I think the whole thrust of it is going to tell and paint that picture of what we were able to accomplish. I was glad to see that he did acknowledge there's still more work to be done, because it's not a perfect anything. One person cannot cure anything. But I do have to give him credit for one thing you can say about Duggan. He can galvanize and he could get people together to work together. That is apparently there, whether it's the business community, you see what he's galvanized, the Black Club captains, you see what he's done with these nonprofits to get people in the room, just like what he did in Southwest Detroit, whether which side of the aisle you're on about, infrastructure, things should have been done. But again, when that episode happened, you see how quickly he was able to get people together in that room. So I think it was nothing that would surprise me. I didn't expect him to say anything but the highlight, especially what his intention is for 2026.
I wonder if this independent bid by Duggan is going to end up blowing up in his face, because I think he took it after he made this move after Michigan went for Trump, and I think he saw it as a way to kind of distance himself from the losers and forge this new identity, the great white hope that saved Detroit, et cetera, whatever. But I'm wondering if the more the Trump team screws up, if there isn't going to be some blowback on that. I don't see him beating Jocelyn Benson. I just don't. And what I do see him being is a spoiler, which would make him which would end his career because he would be roundly loathed by the former party that he belongs to. I don't know. What do you think? What do you guys think?
Gilbert will hire him for something.
Yeah, well, that's his game. Hire him now. He doesn't have to go out and screw up the gubernatorial race to do that.
There are still some people. Who think he'll change his mind. I'm not one of them.
No, I'm not either.
I watched his speech. I happen to think that he's been a very effective mayor. Came in at the right time. He's a good manager. I cannot forgive him for this. This is a penultimate sin at this point in our history, in my opinion. You cannot open the only road available to a John James to get into the state house, right, to the gubernatorial house. You can't do it. And he is, and I don't think he will back down. So I agree completely with Nancy. It's not a question of whether or not he'll ever have a job, but he'll be done in Democratic circles, I think, if he does this. And I'm hoping he'll change his mind. But
Allan,
I think at this point, John James thinks he has Trump's endorsement wrapped up. But as people are saying, as Beverly's mentioned and stuff, by the time 2026 rolls around, Trump may be so vilified, so hated that James might not want that. And he's capable of distancing himself. He's a chameleon on that. Go ahead.
Well, plus Allan,
I hope Beverly's right. But all evidence is to the contrary. I'm a guy who's spent my career dealing with evidence, some of which I didn't like, but you got to deal with the evidence is on the table. Apparently, his numbers will never get below 41%. They drank the Kool-Aid. They're going to follow him. And therefore, what you have, it looks like in Michigan, is 41% is going to go for whoever Trump says. You got the other 60% to divide. And if that goes between, I think it'll be Benson as the Democratic nominee, but I'm biased, and Duggan, if there's anywhere near a split, that means that that's the only way. And I don't believe John James is generally electable against anybody. Even
my prediction is in 26.
I can't see Trump supporting him. I cannot see Trump endorsing John James. Matter of fact, one of my dear friends who's a Republican strategist behind the keys says, no, they're going to be fighting against supporting John James because they do not think he would have a successful win in Michigan. So that's behind the scenes.
Who are they going to endorse? I mean, unfortunately, he's the best candidate they got because while he's an empty suit, he looks good. He sounds good. He's got the helicopter stuff.
How do you know what he sounds like?
He is every word out of his mouth is just like a soap bubble that flies up in the air. It's like that game that kids play where you try to keep a balloon from hitting the ground. That's when he talks. That's what it is. It's just like let's not say anything.
Nancy, isn't that perfect for a politician?
Well,
Barb.
I think that the thing that's going to change the trajectory in Michigan in votes right now is if Social Security gets killed and if the tariffs kill the auto industry. And that's going to completely devastate the state. Even though there are less auto workers than ever before, it is going to devastate the state. It's already becoming impossible to buy a car, to buy a used car even are so expensive. Things are going to get worse and worse and worse. And I really don't want that to happen. I mean, it's terrible. It's going to be so terrible.
Mm-hmm. But why is your buddy Sean Fain falling in line behind this? This is China, and we can build a new car plant in 3 weeks and employ. I mean, what's going on with that guy?
I saw Sean Fain last night. I just would say real fast. I saw Sean Fain last night at an event One of the Ruther brothers' sons wrote a book, and he got up and spoke, and all he talked about was the UAW. But and I did go up and say hi because I have met him before. But as he left, all the union people were in each other's faces going, because there are a lot of people that agree that hate Donald Trump, but agree that the tariffs are the problem, that NAFTA was the problem. I don't think, personally, I think you can't just say, all right, let's just build factories and we'll do it ourselves. They tore down all the factories that used to do all those.
I mean, like I said, this is right. Not China. We don't work that way, you know. And so
I think it's too late. I agree with you, but those conversations were a trip, and lots of red faces and people going back and forth.
And if you want tariffs, this was not the way to do it.
That's not.
And I don't know if any of you saw the Wall Street Journal story last night or today that Trump was on a call with the big three or the Detroit three, and threatened them, basically implicitly threatened them that if they raise prices in reaction to these tariffs, there's going to be hell to pay. And I was talking to a friend about this, and I'm like, what kind of hell could he impose upon them? And he said, you need to have EPA clearance before you can even put a car on the market. He could screw around with that. I mean, there's probably a million ways that these bootlickers and toadies that he has installed in our federal system could easily do that.
But they're going to have to. That's why these tariffs, the way they're imposed, are so bad. They're going to have to raise prices because, look, it's just not how cars are built today.
Right.
They do all the electronics in Windsor and bring them over and assemble them here in Detroit. They're going to have to pay tariffs on all those parts.
It's insane.
If he was going to do these tariffs in a reasonable way, they would be tariffs on cars that are manufactured outside the United States, come in. But if you do all the parts and everything else, the American manufacturers are going to have to raise their prices because it's going to be so much more expensive for them. This is a thought out plan. This is a knee-jerk, reactionary, I want to prove that my private parts are bigger than everybody else's.
The average auto part goes back and forth on the Ambassador Bridge 6 times before the final assembly. So
they have guys in the Rouge plant with I can't remember where it was with binoculars watching the trucks come over. It's like that just in time delivery thing that they do. So
okay, last thing. I know that many of you tune into the show to find out the big reveal whether Bill and Allan are genetically related. It's going to be more difficult now because 23andMe has declared bankruptcy. And so there is a real question about what's going to happen to all of the genetic material and the data that people have. Because correct me if I'm wrong, my esteemed attorneys, but in a bankruptcy proceeding, could that information be sold for 20 cents on the dollar to somebody?
It's going to be a state. The bankruptcy estate, I would believe, but I think it's going to be the trustee who decides what to do with it.
And that's why you have to delete your account now. Yeah.
Well, and how good is? I don't know how good that really is. Number one, you've given your physical DNA. I mean, deleting your account is much of that. So,
well, I figure
trustee of the bankruptcy estate.
The short answer to the question is clearly it's the only asset they have to sell to cover their debts.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to do you guys a solid. With a Petri dish and a 3D printer, I'm going to take Bill and Allan's DNA and I'm going to create the Ubermensch.
I will tell you that Allan and I are brothers from different mothers. We are genetically connected in some way. We just haven't figured out what it is.
Okay. But I don't want to go all the way back to Noah to prove the point. I want something a little bit closer. Okay, Allan, why do we go to our last segment then? But I think you have a video about Greenland.
Oh yes. Let's play that little.
Yeah.
Greenland thing here.
So last week, President Trump announced that he would be sending a special delegation to the future 52nd state, led by a very special woman who Trump is definitely vaguely aware of.
New this morning, Second Lady Usha Vance will go to Greenland this week, the White House announced. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz will join Mrs. Vance as part of the American delegation.
She's a brilliant woman. She's a very nice woman, and she loves the concept of Greenland.
She loves the concept of Greenland. I mean, green, she loves green. And land, don't even get her started.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, Allan, take it away.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right, we're going to start for Schmuck of the Week, just so that Jalal knows how we do this. We're going to start with Beverly.
Okay, mine, and this is not because I am a proud Spartan of MSU. U of M, you know, they kind of disappointed me on how they rolled out that they will be doing away with their DEI programs. Now, I think the current individuals who made this decision, I get it. People are, you know, intimidated, don't want to lose federal funding. But when you look at, you know, the U of M, their legacy is standing up, you know, for everyone. You go back to the affirmative action days and all of that. So I get that, but I'm really, really disappointed in them on how they announced that they're just blatantly cutting all their DEI programs without explaining the definition of those programs to disband the myth that it really only serves the Black community and minorities. So I'm disappointed in how their communications or lack there was. So they are my smokes of the week.
See, Beverly, I thought you were going to go in on the U of M story about the former offensive coordinator, Matt Weiss, being indicted for apparently accessing and stealing intimate details and photos.
Today.
All right. But just to dismiss it off as being just perverted shit, where have we come as a nation to?
I had to read the story twice to really understand what. It was so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah.
And perverted.
Yeah.
And perverted.
Use
Joel.
Strong passwords. Sorry.
I'm going to go with a little Marco Rubio. He's one who you know confirmed that he revoked the visa of the tough student, and this is just such a dangerous road we're on. You know, it's just the slope is slippery, whatever you want to use. It's just a descent. And it scares me that someone who comes to this country to experience freedom, to experience free speech, maybe take that home with them, is treated this way and retaliated against on the street. My heart goes out to her. I can't imagine the panic and the fear that she must have felt, to the family who must be so concerned about their daughter. This is just tragic, being literally kidnapped on the street. You know,
by people that were not identifying themselves at all. I mean, they had masks and they didn't have.
Put yourself in her shoes.
Yeah.
You know, we don't do that. Some empathy. Put yourself in her shoes to understand how horrific this action was. Yeah. So,
an analyst on CNN justifying this by saying, well, they covered their faces so that they don't get doxxed. The irony of that.
Please. But it's an offense to democracy. And again, the First Amendment had a nice run. I guess.
And I think Joe's absolutely he's on my list, but Rubio bragged about it and said, and I'll do it with anybody else that I can find who does the same thing.
These lunatics, and they're not lunatics.
And they have a lot of.
And she was also transported out down to
Louisiana
against a court order.
Right.
And they have a lot of support from people who are saying this is great until they start going after the Patsy Cline fans. Then we'll hit the heartland of America.
Patsy Cline. Wow, Allan. That's like saying that Trump's going to endorse Rick James instead of John James. Which, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Barb.
I really wanted to pick the fertilization president, but if you guys saw his speech, by the way, where he is all about fertilization. Yeah. I mean, I really think that Donald Trump's brain is melting. But my choice is Christine Nolan, who went to El Salvador with her stylist, apparently, had fresh extensions put in. full makeup. It looked like she got a little extra lip filler done and a $60,000 Rolex, and stood in front of prisoners that we have sent down there. We don't know if they are terrorists or if they are gang members or what, but men that were swept up, standing in boxer shorts, and talked about how tough she was.
Yeah.
And she's such a sickening excuse. It's when you think, oh, this woman shot a dog in the face in front of friends and then a goat. No, she's worse than that. She is worse than that.
It was like the establishing shot in a really, really sick porno movie. You know, it was just like, I was like, whoa.
But, Nancy, I want to know how you know that.
I read widely.
No, she comes from the same state as Larry Flint. Come on, Bill. No, I mean, it's a skin-tight white long-sleeve crew neck, and then also athleisure pants.
And I'm pretty sure she's had her boobs done. I just don't.
Oh, because she showed, again, as women, we know she showed them off with that the T-shirt and the way that is.
Yes, Bill.
She took her stylist.
Nancy, it's remarkable bras out now. They're making
Bill, cover your ears, Bill. It is Ramadan. Jalal, who's your schmuck of the week?
My schmuck of the week. By the way, all great, answers from you guys. But he's been my honestly schmuck of the last year is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Because the health department has announced they're going to fire 10,000 more people, and as somebody who reveres, his dad and his uncle, as a political heroes and whatnot, I'm sure a lot of us do. This guy, he just went way off the deep end, and it's just sad, man. It's just to see that it's kind of like, a microcosm of politics. Generations before of these guys stood up for the right things, and you see some of their descendants and how far they've fallen. It's just a very sad state of affairs in our political discourse and what's going on right now.
There's a saying about this, like
totally
rags to riches to rags in 3 generations, something like that.
I think that's a great one, Jalal, but not to mention Cheryl Hines, who is sticking by her man. It's ruining Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's a Shonda.
It is a Shonda.
Yeah, she's sticking around with him more than she did Larry David. So.
Yeah.
Nancy.
Okay, I am going with the collective legal management team at Skadden Arps and 3 other names that I'm not sure.
Meeker Floam.
Thank you. Which is about the whitest white shoe law firm in the Eastern Seaboard, and they are bending the knee to fat ass and his crew of idiots, and they're trying to negotiate some sort of deal where they would be left off of the hit list, and apparently they're in talks to do this. And it was like Bill was saying before, it's going to be up to like solo practitioners, like our troika of lawyers, to, if anything gets done at all. I mean, this is terrifying. This is truly terrifying that these incredibly powerful institutions like the University of Michigan, like, Skadden Arps, like all these other law firms and universities and so forth, are bending the knee without even putting up a fight for it. Yeah. And so this is why I am deleting and unsubscribing every Democratic fundraising email that I get, because I'm like, show me something before you ask for my money. And nobody is showing anything. And it's like, if you want to know how people get so desperate that they move from angrily written op-eds to car bombs in 10 steps, this is how it happens. When the powerful won't even stand up for the powerless anymore in this country, it's going to be, bad.
Well, Nancy, I mean, Skadden is one of the world's premier mergers and acquisitions firms, and I think they want to be in front of the line when we do an M&A with Greenland.
Yeah.
So
William Hale and Jenner Block are taking a stand. Within the last half hour.
What's the other one?
The Jenner and Block Wilmer Hale joined General Block and suing to block the orders that stripped.
Okay. Well, I'm glad somebody's
there are
doing
some
it.
big firms who are standing up to Trump, and I hope the courts are good to them.
Yeah,
Well,
I hope
good.
so.
Bill.
My schmucks of the week are two state legislators, legislative bodies, both the Utah and the Florida legislatures. One, Utah for being the first state to ban fluoride from drinking water. There's a real progressive move. Let's bring back more cavities for these kids.
Yeah.
And the other, the Florida legislature, that, believe it or not, has decided to reevaluate their child labor laws and to allow children.
Need some reform on that.
Bastards, let's get them out there.
More, and to eliminate the prohibition of 16 and 17-year-olds from working all night on school nights. And why? Well, the great governor decided to discuss that issue, and he said, DeSantis said, you know what? We've got to find somebody to replace these illegals who are in the state. We've got a shortage, and good idea if the kids contributed.
Wow.
DeSantis actually said this. I mean, it is almost impossible for me to believe. So those great state legislators who push these ridiculous agendas are my schmucks of the week.
Tiny fingers make the smallest stitches.
Yeah.
Allan.
I'm going to say first Marjorie Taylor Greene for just being Marjorie Taylor Greene, but when she was questioned by a British reporter about the whole Signalgate thing, just said, "Go back to your country." I mean, just the mentality. And the other one is Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary, who's going to clearly surpass Sarah Huckabee Sanders as just the biggest liar and the biggest mouthpiece for Trump, regardless. I mean, you would think at some point where they say, well, go out there and say that, and they'll be like, fuck you, you go out and say that. But they just are so obedient. They're so obedient. And like Sarah Huckabee Sanders couldn't understand, like, she'd go to a restaurant and people would be hating on her in public. And it'd be like, oh my God, she was fine all the time. People get annoyed with that.
Oh boy. So I've got two. One is the right-wing media that, instead of covering by and large the whole issue of the Signal messaging app call about Yemeni war plans, decided to obsess over the fact that the CIA may actually know the location of the Ark of the Covenant, which I thought had already been solved 45 years ago by Steven Spielberg and George Lucas in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But my schmuck of the week, though, really has to be, and thank God Detroit is a Delta city, the United Airlines pilot who, taking off from LAX bound to Shanghai, China, had to turn the plane around 2 hours later when he realized he didn't have his passport. The flight then had to come back, landed at SFO, San Francisco, which is a United hub. They had to then get a new crew on board new catering, and of course, flight attendants as well. Flight took off and then landed in Shanghai 6 hours later. How do you forget a primary document?
I knew it. I got in the car. I knew it.
See,
I promise you.
Mine is always. Did I put the garage door down? You know. Yeah, I'm still, Joel. My big thing when I get to the airport is I'm still wondering who shot JR. So but everybody has something they forget. Well, listen. Thank you all, and again, for being a great audience, being a great panel, being with us for the week that was. Thank you, Jalal Abdallah. Thank you, Beverly Watson. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you, with the last word always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Have a great weekend.